Good evening, UC Santa Barbara. My name is Josie Penix, and on behalf of Coastal Conversations, I'm happy to welcome you to a conversation with NASA. When Eddie Barajas and I founded this platform, our goal was to bypass the noise of standard news cycles and directly connect our student community with the individuals executing the most complex, high-stakes missions on the planet. As university students, we spend years studying the theoretical frameworks of our respective disciplines. We analyze formulas, write code, and look at optimized models on screens, but there's a massive divide between theory and practice. In reality, components fail, conditions shift, margins of error shrink to zero, and the cost of a single miscalculation can mean the loss of a human life. The people who bridge that divide are the ones responsible for taking complex theory and turning it into flawless execution. Tonight, we have the distinct privilege of hosting two individuals who operate at the absolute limit of modern engineering and exploration, representing NASA's premier flight research and interplanetary exploration centers. Troy Asher, joined the Armstrong flight operations staff in 2008 as a research test pilot and aerospace engineer. This followed a 24-year career as a U.S. Air Force officer and test pilot, retiring with the rank of lieutenant colonel. He served as the director for flight operations at NASA Armstrong, responsible for managing the center's 300-person flight research operation of pilots, maintainers, and engineers, as well as a fleet of 25 highly modified manned and unmanned aircraft of 11 different types that are flown on worldwide aeronautical, science, and astronomy flight research missions. Mr. Asher is now the acting center director at NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center in Edwards, California. Recently appointed to this position, he oversees all aspects of management, strategy, and operations at Armstrong, one of the agency's 10 field centers. Richard Cook is the Associate Lab Director for Strategic Integration and Director for Strategy and Formulation at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Prior to this role, he served as the Mars Sample Return Program Manager and was responsible for coordination and execution of all NASA components of the program. Previously, he served as JPL's Associate Director for Flight Projects and Mission Success and was responsible for oversight of all development and operational projects. Mr. Cook has also served as Deputy Director for Solar System Exploration and Manager for the Mars Science Laboratory Project during development and operations. In the latter capacities, he was responsible for the design, development, launch, and operations of the Curiosity rover that successfully landed on Mars in August of 2012. We're here tonight to talk about the impact of politics and policy on NASA funding, research, and overall vision, as well as the future of space exploration and the civilian leadership tension in a field increasingly becoming privatized. To ensure this conversation reflects what you actually want to know, we reviewed every single question you submitted during registration. Eddie and I have constructed tonight's program directly around your technical curiosity and your biggest questions about the future of aerospace and technology. Before we start chatting, a quick note on the environment we want to maintain tonight. This entire conversation is being recorded and will be published online as a direct reflection of UCSB's intellectual culture, our rigor, and our respect for top-tier expertise. We ask that everyone maintain the professional decorum that a panel of this caliber deserves. Thank you all for being here and for showing up curious. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Gaucho Rocket Club's finest, Gianni Barajas, with NASA's Troy Asher and Richard Cook. Please.
Thank you.
Start us off.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. It's pretty excellent that we have two very different sides of NASA. So we have the side of NASA like everyone always thinks about, right? Mars, Moon, with Mr. Cook, overseeing the Mars Sample Return Program and the Martian rovers, and then Director Asher does the aeronautic side of things. So if any of you guys have heard of the X-59, which is the new vehicle for supersonic flight, basically going faster than the speed of sound over land, that's NASA Armstrong base. So 2 of these bases are also in California as well. So these, if you're interested in working at NASA and want to stay in California, as opposed to going in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, these are your people. I think first and foremost, talking about some of the projects and the stakes, I would think would be great. And in particular, I'm curious to know what the progress has been on the X-59 and why we should do it and how it's going.
Well, we can start with that. So it's great to be here to start with. A whole bunch of people, more than I thought, so hopefully we can have some good conversation. That's kind of our premier project for the NASA aviation these days. So that's the first A in NASA. A lot of people don't know that we do still do that, but we do have a pretty prolific aeronautics portfolio going on, especially with this one. So we've been doing this research probably at least for 25 years, maybe a little bit longer, in how to cancel out or stop the sonic boom effect from happening while we fly. And that's been outlawed, I guess, by regulation in the country for a very, very long time. And it's limited really how fast we can fly. So this idea, the idea behind this, years of research, the shape of the airplane, the way it's used, the altitudes, a whole lot of different technology goes into it. But the idea is to make an airplane that can fly faster than the speed of sound. This one is designed for 54,000 feet at 1.4 Mach number without creating, well, we call it a sonic thump. So what it's supposed to sound like, we haven't actually proven it yet, but it's going well, is if you are walking down the street, across the street, somebody slams a car door, that is the goal sound. It's an 80 dB kind of a sound. So for you concert goers, you know what 80 dB is. Not very loud, right? And it's going well. We've flown the airplane about, I've seen 14 times now, and we've got up to 0.95 Mach, so just below the speed of sound at 43,000 feet. So we're making really good progress. It's a one-of-a-kind airplane built from scratch, and so we're taking it really easy, making sure we don't mess it up, because any incidents with the airplane and we're finished, because there's only one of them. So I can go into that all night long, any other questions you might have, but that's kind of an overview of it.
Yeah, I think the big thing is just impact, right? So if we do fly at Mach 1.4, how fast could I get from LAX to JFK over in New York?
Right, so at Mach 1.4, it's not significantly quicker at that speed. Probably, we're talking maybe 900 to 1,000 miles per hour, as opposed to, you're down much less than that now. But if it's, say, 5 hours to get from LA to DC, for instance, or New York, you might cut an hour off of that. But the real thing is if we can prove out the concept that we can cancel out and control the sonic boom so that doesn't happen. Part of our test program is going to be fly over places like New York City and Los Angeles and see if anybody notices, and while we're supersonic. And if that all works, then our goal is to produce the data that shows you how to design an airplane like that, the tools, the software tools, and the design techniques to design that airplane, how to measure it, how to certify it, and then the commercial companies now have designs for Mach 2, Mach 3. Much faster, and that will reduce your time from New York to LA to like 2 hours or less. So it really makes the world a small place at that point.
My understanding of a lot of these projects that NASA's working on right now is that they're almost incomprehensibly large and long-term. And I'd love to know, I think Mr. Cook, you could speak on this as well, what it's like working on these really long-term projects when there's so much administrative turnover or funding from the government issues that happen throughout the project. What's that like?
Sure. So I'm from the first S in NASA, I guess. Maybe it's the only S in NASA. But anyway, yeah, that's my side of the world, the space side. So it's interesting you bring that up because, I mean, yes, I've worked on projects that have lasted 8, 10 years, and then they all come down to, people have famously heard of the 7 minutes of terror, when the spacecraft enters Mars, and all comes down to that one moment where all this work is on the line to to be successful or not, and it's nerve-wracking, but I think it's also a proof of what, what we're talking about doing is something that, and you guys can do it in the Rocket Club and other things that you have here, where you work together as a team and you realize that you're a part of a bigger endeavor, and it really is a little bit humbling that it takes all these people working together. You're utterly dependent on this person that worked on this little piece of software or this deployment mechanism, and that they had to. The thing wouldn't work if their part wasn't right, and it makes you realize that you're part of this sort of group that is utterly reliant on everybody else to do their part, and that they're doing it because they're professional and they know what they're doing and they're really committed to success. That's the big projects are like that. We also do a lot of things that are a lot faster than that, and that's one of the things that we're really leaning into now, is to try to be more, nimble in terms of making progress on missions. And certainly going, Voyager, I think people might know is obviously the furthest human-made object, is going to be 50 years old next year. And the fact that I can't get my television to last 5 years, much less a spacecraft that's, one light day away. But it is a testament to how reliable these things are, and yet we also need to say to ourselves, we want to put new technology in things, and we want to push to go faster than we've done before. And so that's a big thrust of the new leadership at NASA, is to be, sort of faster in what we do, so that we don't have to spend 8-10 years making projects happen.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting with this, that we got a question about the Mars Sample Return Program, which you worked on, and
sure.
Recently,
I've worked on 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I contributed a little bit to that, and kind of in this process, we saw that it got cut. And then the administrator, Isaacman, has been trying to retool concepts of the project and work on the project for new projects. Is there anything you can touch on that? Like, how do you get like this Fetch rover that we were working on for the Mars Sample Return Program to then apply to a new project for these longer-term 10-year visions?
Yeah, so the challenge of a sample return mission, it's hard enough to send something to Mars, just to go one way, and we've kind of gotten good at that over the last 2 or 3 decades, but to bring it back really represents a kind of just a big step forward. And if you think about, how hard it is just to bring back, a basketball size, capsule of rocks, can you imagine taking humans there and back? That's, it is a challenging problem. But the thing that where the sort of world is changing very rapidly is to take advantage of the capabilities that are out in industry more than we have historically done, and to try to commercialize and commoditize things we can, leaving the hard things, maybe for NASA to do or for JPL to do, or some of our, other NASA centers. And so a good example of that is the Mars Ascent Vehicle. We've never built a rocket. You guys are building a rocket now. Imagine taking it to Mars, getting it to survive the time there, getting it to survive the cold temperature, and then launch, and then finding the capsule that it put up into orbit around Mars. That's the part that NASA should really be focused on, and there's other pieces of it that I think is where we could rely on industry to do more of that. And that's what the administrator is sort of challenging us to do, is to look for new ways, not just sort of do it the way, very successfully done it the way we've done things in the past, but we need to push harder to do things less expensively.
It sounds like the dynamics of the team is really important in terms of being able to not be slowed down when funding gets changed or when research priorities shift. What does that look like in practice when you're working with your teams, and when you're hearing from Congress that you didn't get funding, or hearing that programs are being cut or things are being moved around? How do you cope with that?
It's kind of like it sounds. Is you have a team that is working on a project, dedicated to it sometimes for a number of years, and then you're kind of at the mercy of a funding cycle. So that's the stressful part of, I think, what we do in an organization like that. But I don't think it's necessarily that much different in industry either, because you have different pressures there. You have shareholders to think about, and you have stock prices, and you have all those kinds of things that affect you just as much as it does us. in the government side. So I believe in any of these technology type jobs, you're going to have some of that unknown, and I think it's important to just keep your resilience and tenacity up and stay the course. And there's plenty of work out there right now. This is kind of what our administrators calling the golden age of exploration right now. There's a lot of jobs out there, so if one doesn't work out, there's another one over there somewhere.
How much of your guys' roles are helping your engineers and getting science to push forward versus getting Congress to help you guys fund these projects, kind of at the higher levels, right? It seems all I've seen is just clips of the administrator talking to Congress. The astronauts recently went to Congress, and it really seems like they are your bosses, and they can cut funding or give you more funding. And with the presidential appropriations and the discrepancy between the appropriations from the White House versus what NASA actually received, it seems that you guys probably have to focus more on making other people happy as opposed to fundamental research?
We have lots of bosses, so you have to do a little bit of that no matter what you do. I would say that NASA's work is actually surprisingly bipartisan, right? It's one of the places where there's a lot of support. I mean, even with the vagaries of the budget cycle, for which we really can't sort of directly engage with that because we're trying not to influence the outcome of those things. But if you look at kind of how things work out, I mean, there's certainly ups and downs, but I think both sides of the aisle are pretty supportive of all aspects of what NASA does, and so that's reassuring, and I think it really relates to the fact that what we're doing is trying to make this country and our capabilities better. And so people are, that's something that everybody can kind of get behind. Do I wish that I could spend more time doing engineering than I do? Absolutely. But I think part of it, and I think part of being a leader and being in charge of a team of people is to get them the resources they need to be successful. And although it'd be cool to be doing the technical work myself sometimes, it's also a recognition that there's everybody has a role that they got to play.
I guess respectively, if you had all the funding that you could ever dream for and wish for, is there a particular project you would want to do?
Well, so to me, Mars sample return is certainly, because we were very close to getting it done. But I think there's, there's a one mission that I worked on a little while ago is landing on Europa, on the moon of Jupiter, and it's fascinating to me because JPL obviously does a lot of science missions that we still are searching for life somewhere other than the Earth, and sample return is a little bit in service of that. Europa lander was gonna look for the potential for life in the subsurface ocean of Europa. And then certainly a lot of the James Webb and a lot of the astrophysics missions are looking for exoplanets too. And so, it'd be nice to find evidence of terrestrial life somewhere, would be my thing.
A hypersonic X-plane. So the X-43 NASA did in the late 90s, early 2000s, reached Mach 9.63, pretty fast. And we've kind of stopped with that, and that sort of faded into the classified military side of things over the last 25 years, and we're coming back. So that's where I would put my effort, and I don't think it's that far away from us getting back into that business. And then from that point, you're not too far away from a single stage to orbit aircraft where you can go right out of here off a runway and come back. So that's kind of the promise. We had that thought several years ago, and it's coming back.
I'm curious about what the conversation might look like when NASA's making the decisions about new research efforts. It seems like if you've got all these programs you're working on for years, when it finally is time that you have the space and capabilities to work on something new or point yourselves in a new direction, how does that process begin?
It kind of depends on the area that you're talking about. Like in the case of science-related activities, NASA has a very they work together with the national academies to sort of prioritize what are the big science questions that NASA should be going after, and so we have these decadal surveys that are the sort of the roadmap. Human spaceflight is a little bit more, driven by geopolitical sorts of questions and that there's a lot of, I mean, although, I mean, certainly, I hope you guys all saw the Artemis II mission. I mean, there has been a remarkable continuity over the last 10 years of staying focused on doing Artemis, despite administration changes back and forth. And so I think the recognition of, Mars is a blue state and the moon is a red state thing is kind of over now, and that it's like, let's do the moon. I mean, there's a lot of, again, geopolitical reasons for doing it, but the worst thing of all would be to stop and start and stop and start. And so I think now there's, I think we're seeing the byproduct of that, which is, a successful, free return mission around the moon. And I think by the time, this administration ends, I think it's very high probability that we'll land on the moon again. So.
Yeah, and I mean, doing too many things at once usually is a recipe for not getting anything done well, right? So we now are fortunate, I think, to have a national space policy that was set forth by the administration, and that focuses the agency, that's a mandate to NASA to go do the policy, land on the moon, and establish a moon base there, establish a space economy. That's all in the national policy. So we focus on that, and maybe that gets us there with the limited amount of funding that we know we have. We've heard our administration say we think we have enough money to do those things.
I feel like this brings us into a topic that our audience today was very excited to hear about, which is your takes on the future of space exploration. I'd love to hear you talk about specifically what your center is looking at and maybe what you personally would like to see happen in the near future or the far future or ever.
The direction we're going is fantastic. Now, I come from an aeronautics center, so we don't have space really in our name, but you still have to get from the surface of the Earth up to orbit, and that's still air breathing. So we have a lot in there. My center's done quite a bit for Artemis, for instance. We did a lot of work on the heat shield as it was re-entering, both instrumenting it and observing it. We helped design and test. We did the testing for the crew escape modules on the rocket as it goes up. So we provided telemetry for the launch and the recovery using our unmanned vehicles. And so there's a lot of things we can do in the atmosphere that enables that piece. And like we mentioned before, everything we have here is a team effort. And without one of those pieces in the chain, the whole thing fails. And so I think it's great from our perspective. We're also working on high-speed aviation here on the Earth. We're also working on understanding the planet, because we also have a lot of airborne science going on there. So contributing that way. Your question was more about space exploration, though. And it looks like, we may, hard to tell for sure, but we may be to a point in human history where the technology has finally reached a launch point where we can actually start the exploration. And once we cross some line where we can get there, I think it's there's no limit to where we can go. So getting to the moon, everything we're going to learn, there's so many details that we're going to learn by doing that and living there. And then once we've got that down, you see how technology is just going off the scale. I think the time between establishing a constant presence on the moon and exploration of our entire solar system is going to be much faster. So I'm really optimistic about where this goes. Probably in the next 10 to 20 years, my lifetime still, I hope, we're going to see people walking around on Mars. It's going to be probably maybe my grandkids, maybe some of you, hopefully, or probably your kids walking on Mars, but we'll see. It could go a lot faster than that. You know how technology goes.
That's crazy to think about. Mm-hmm. In terms of technology in general and how quickly things can change and how much your careers might shift or the NASA research objectives might shift when new technology comes forward, what's that like? Or maybe could you give us an example of an instance where some sort of new technology really changed the way that you did your jobs or the way that you were thinking about the research you do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think people sort of maybe don't entirely realize that at the beginning of, for example, during the Apollo program, there was, 50, 60 years ago, there were no such things as computers, or very rudimentary capability. No software really on the Apollo, capsule, and so just the technology in my cell phone is more capable than all of the computers that have ever flown on spacecraft, pretty much in space, period, right? And it's because of the fact that NASA had to invent some of that technology, and then they had to put it in an environment where it's not really survivable unless you protect it and make it rad hard, radiation hardened and stuff like that. And so, but once those technologies take off, then they very quickly overcome the ability of the agency to cultivate and motivate those things, and that's great, because then we become users as opposed to inventors of the things. And so certainly the processing capability, I mean, the big, I'm sure you guys read about orbital data centers and things like that. I mean, the ability to get compute power into space in the next decade is going to make for some very amazing things, because it's challenging to do it here on the Earth at scale when you're trying to build data centers, in people's backyards. And so there are definitely opportunities there to use that fundamental technology of advanced capability in both the pure hardware itself, but also AI and the software side of things, to be able to do some amazing things. I think that's going to be a revolutionary phase over the next 5-10 years with compute capability in space.
There's been a lot of things in the aviation side that have done that. Some very super simple things, instrumentation-wise. We've got fiber optic strain sensing now, where when we would test airplanes before, you have to wire. You've got wires. You've probably seen this in a test program. You got wires all over the airplane, because you have to instrument everything as you're testing it to see what it's doing, so you can prove the concepts. And that is very problematic. It's very tedious work and not often reliable. With fiber optics now, super light. It's the size of a human hair instead of a wire with a sensor on the end of it. You can put it all over the airplane, and you can do literally 2 orders of magnitude more data from these than you could do using classic methods. So little things. That's a small thing that probably nobody ever thought of in here. But unless you can instrument an object to test it, you can't test it, because you don't know the data. There's a lot of those little things like that. As much as I've seen from when I was in your shoes, the kind of thought processes we were using, because we were bogged down in administrative tasks. We were still doing algebra on paper, where you guys don't have to bother with that now, and you guys are thinking these big thoughts that we never got to because we're bogged down in the math. Now think about that and how that's enabled the things we're doing with technology, and now layer artificial intelligence on top of that. And I know that's a buzzword. Everybody's saying AI this, AI that, but and there's the evil side and all that. But what I see is that is going to multiply your intelligence by 10 times, because it takes away all the other mundane things that you don't have to think about, so you can think about the really big stuff. And that's what's going to cause the technology to just go off the scale and get us to Mars and beyond that.
Yeah, one thing that's really interesting about your position right now is that you're taking over as director of Armstrong Flight Research Center after the previous director has been there for 40 years, since 1986. I guess for reference, my mom was born in 1985, so...
Well,
thank you for pointing that out.
But to be honest, we had several center directors before that, but we had a couple of guys that were there for 10 years at a time, something like that. So we probably had. The last time a pilot was the director, though, was in 1990. So it's been quite a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And then similarly, we have a new administrator, and it seems like NASA's kind of gone this new resurgence with the Artemis missions, and I know we were actually on the coast seeing if we could see the re-entry just off of San Diego.
A little far out there, but
a little far. We didn't see anything, and it was super cloudy. But,
We pretended.
how's that like? I mean, do you have a particular vision for the research center? A lot of pressure. I know you still have to fight for the actual director position as well.
Well, I mean, I think I'm really excited about where NASA's going, and I hope all of you guys are too. I mean, it's kind of a whole new new age. We have a younger group coming in. You know, culture is a tough thing. And a lot of us, like myself, you know, been around for a long time. I haven't been at NASA for all that length of time myself, so I'm fairly new at NASA. But you know, changing that culture requires really turning over into the younger generation, and I think that's really super important. You see that coming from our administrator. He's a younger guy. I mean, in his early 40s, and brought a whole bunch of people in like that to kind of reinvigorate our agency. And so it's really exciting to see that. For me, I was just, I guess, lucky being where I was at the time and got the opportunity to do that. And our administrator wanted to retool NASA a little bit, and he made a center for aviation, Center of Excellence for Aviation. And that's what Armstrong is becoming. And each one of our 10 centers has got a specialty now, and really specializing, kind of like we talked about earlier, on focusing on specific things. And I think that makes us accelerate. So I was lucky to be there. Our center is now the Aviation Center of Excellence, and so it's good to put. I just happen to be the right guy at the right time, I think, and I'm really super excited about it. We're going to try to move forward and do a whole bunch of new things that maybe we've been kind of slow doing in the past.
Yeah. On culture, is there anything in particular that Gen Z, us in this room, bring that's new and fresh?
Hype us up.
Hype us up, and then also maybe one thing that we can still learn.
It's just that you bring a whole new vision. I mean, you know, I think the older generations, like myself, would tend to come out of college and maybe get an internship, which we still do, and I highly recommend you all apply for. But then get hired by NASA, and then stay there working in the same place for 40 years, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And that really, you know, it stifles creativity a little bit, because you kind of get into a groove. You've been doing the same thing for 40 years, and it does make it harder to move and make changes. So I think injecting new ideas, new fresh looks at the world is super important. And that's what we're doing right now. Our new hiring is 30% is the goal of new hires, early career hires. Of everybody we hire going forward in the next 5 years is 30% minimum is an early career person, and that's all of you. And then we're working real hard. The other part is to bring in maybe some more experience on top of that to kind of help mentor those 30%, so that and do that quickly, in maybe 2 years. So that now you're up to speed, and you get all this great pent-up energy that you all have and intelligence, and now it's focused, and then you go do that great thing and change the culture to something that goes a little faster than 8 years for a project.
What
I was going to say that was the first project I worked on at JPL. I think I was 28 or something. 27 was Mars Pathfinder, right? The first rover that landed on Mars, and we did the whole thing in 3 years, and that was exactly the combination of people. I mean, it was, don't mean to be to sound like an old person, but one of the advantages of youth is to not know what you don't know. That makes you fearless in some ways, and going and doing things by trying stuff that seems really hard and just going for it is the answer. Then you have a few people. So we had the guy that was the project manager, long time JPL, been around for 40 years, and he was sort of the wizened old timer with a bunch of kids, to be honest, and was able to keep us from running off the tracks frequently. I do believe strongly that doing things is the way where the agency is steered back towards, let's do stuff, not just pay people to do things, right? And that's critical for both companies, agencies, but also people, is having a role where you can actually get your hands dirty and really make something happen and make the mistakes, fail with a little f, not a big F, is all the stuff that absolutely you have to do, because that's how you learn much more quickly from failures than from successes, I'm afraid to say. So
how do we keep on that pace? I feel like infamously we went to the moon 50 years ago and haven't returned yet. How do we make sure that we don't lose that again?
Give up is the main thing. Because a lot of times we lose some of the will to keep doing things, right? It's like, oh, we've done that or whatever, and we don't, there's not I mean, there's not an economic incentive to keep doing it. I mean, certainly after Apollo, there was like, okay, well, we beat the Russians, we're done, check the box, and the Soviets, check the box, and we don't need to do that anymore. And I think, part of the challenge in the end of everything we're doing now is to not turn the next decade into, 1972, where we decide, okay, we've gotten what we wanted to do. We need to sustainably build for a future economy in low Earth orbit or on the moon or wherever. That's, in the end, that's what drives progress is economic benefit. And so we got to keep pushing in that direction.
In terms of pushing forward, I mean, you mentioned it a bit before, and I know the press conference this morning talked about it, but I want to bring us back to the moon base race and that, everything that's going on there. Will you speak to that?
Sure. I mean, there's lots of reasons that are good to think about, having a lunar base. I mean, and I think it's good to have we talked about the national space policy, to focus on that because it makes it really clear. I mean, there's certainly, we are in a race for leadership in national or international leadership, and I think if we need to sort of step up to that. But I also think there's economic benefits to doing, to building a permanent lunar base as well. Not just in terms of developing, sort of industry here on the Earth, but hopefully eventually, tourism or energy or other things like that on the moon. And I think those are the, prioritizing that and focusing on that as a sustainable thing is what it's good to see we're trying to do.
There's a lot of intrinsics that come along with it too. From the original space program, Apollo days and before, look at all the technological items that came out of that we all take for granted now, and they were developed as part of the space program. So as in our quest to get this going again, not only do you learn a lot getting there and how you get to the next thing, but all of those technological advances, the things you learned just getting there, come back to be used here as technological advances here. So you get a whole lot out of it that you don't think about it. It's not just about going to the moon, but it's about what you learn in getting there and what you get out of it.
When it comes to like a lunar economy, we have companies like Impulse Space that are looking to build propulsion to get to the moon and then hopefully do some helium-3 mining. And part of that is like there is a financial incentive if we can, do lunar mining or helium-3 mining. How do you guys not lose talent to the private industry? When an engineer says, I can go to this company and make more money, I guess recently, like the NASA internships don't pay as much as the non-NASA internships. I was talking to my friends and they have double the stipend that I have, and they get to live in nicer neighborhoods. That's not middle of nowhere, Alabama. How's that tension been not losing to private industry?
You do. There's just no getting around it, and honestly, that happens. In the aerospace industry, the workforce just moves around, and for one reason or another. There's good reasons to work for each company, and it really comes down to a personal choice. With the hope with what we're building at NASA right now is that we make it an exciting place to work, and we're doing the near impossible over there, and that might be the thing that draws you over there to do that for a while. My case in point, coming out of the Air Force, I could have gone and made 2 to 3 times more money than I make working for NASA, but then again, I don't get to fly a fighter jet, and that's part of the reason I'm there. So that's the kind of thing here. Where else might you get to work on some of the things we're doing at NASA? That's maybe part of the reason you're there. Lifestyle's a difference. The different companies manage differently, so sometimes that twice the paycheck may or may not be worth it based on the work environment that you're subjected to. So maybe the work environment for NASA is a little bit different and it fits your style. So there's a lot of reasons. It comes down to personal choice. But what we're building at NASA right now is something I hope that will be attractive to people to come at least work for us for a time and share your intellect with us.
I also think it's the opportunity to take on some of the hardest problems, right? I mean, it's not to say, building a lunar lander is a great thing. I'm a huge fan of it. JPL is working on it right now. On one. We are also we also built Surveyor that landed on the moon in 1965, right? And so it's not, and so there are absolutely things that are great to do because we can apply new technology, but it's not the same as building a Europa lander, right, or building an interstellar probe. And so, there's some things that are the really hard problems, which are the things that NASA, building the X-59, that's not something that a commercial company will do because there's no business case for them to do it. But once it's been done by the people in NASA, then somebody else can pick it up and make it happen, and that's great, and they should. And the people that work for them, will make a lot of money, and that's good for them too, right? And so it's not an either or. You can do both. So.
I guess I'm also just curious with you guys mentioning you're pushing for a lot of new hires. Kind of in the audience, how many of you guys have actually applied to NASA? Can you raise your hands? Raise them high, raise them high. And then of you guys who applied, how many of you guys got an offer? So it appears just one.
It's NASA. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's,
But
it's way harder now than when I started there. I would never have gotten a job at JPL now, unfortunately. So
I guess my first question would be is do you know where to apply? I don't know how hard or easy we make it known to how to get into an internship. We have a lot of them. I usually swear in anywhere from 10 to 20 new hires each spring that come in to work for us, and some of them will stay with us for 6 months, and some will be with us for a long time. So, but it's nationwide. So
yeah, I guess what's the best way to incorporate us? Other than just applying and applying and applying and applying. Is there anything?
getting an advanced degree.
Getting an advanced degree. So,
Getting work experience. Both. Like internships. Getting. It's better to like I said, get hands-on experience and ratchet your way up into the agency than just keep waiting kind of to get the perfect job.
yeah, the mantra is apply early and often, and that's always good advice. If you don't get it on the first one, keep going. Apply the first time you're not even qualified or barely qualified or maybe almost qualified. Start applying and just keep at it. That's how it works. That's how the astronauts are selected. Many of them don't get selected until their third or fourth or fifth time, and it's very common. So also find out, do more research if you're interested in NASA. There's lots of opportunity, right? Especially coming up. It's going to get better in the next year as well.
As someone who's close to graduating, I feel like I've heard often that the master's is the new bachelor's and that getting the advanced degree is super expected now. And it can be really difficult making that decision between, do I slow down and keep staying in school, or should I be rushing to the workforce and trying to get in early? How would you say in your specific career fields it should be balanced or considered?
So I got a master's, and it was very much, I do think that the amount of, believe it or not, the amount of education you can get in 4 years is actually limited. Because there's just too many other things you got to take, and so I do think that extra year or two is super important. I'm less convinced of a PhD only because a lot of people do it. They get very narrow, and it kind of depends on what your interests are. If you're a PhD person because you like something in a lot of depth, then great, right? But I think spending that extra time and then deciding you want to be a jack of all trades kind of a person is probably not the good choice. But I at least in the case of JPL and I think the rest of the agency is the same way. It's very much. I think that's, to me, a master's is a good balance, between working and spending too much time in school, to be honest. And so,
I'd say it really depends on what you want to do with your own, your own future. Mm-hmm. If you're really interested in the more pure fundamental research ideas, then the education is going to have to be a little higher. But I think if you're more into applied research, like my center. I'd venture. I don't know. I have not done a survey. That's something I should do. But I would venture to say less than half of our people have master's degrees. It's bachelor's. We have a pretty good program to send people to get their master's degree while they're working. and that's a really good thing NASA offers. So I think it depends on the center that you go to. So we have 10 centers. Some of them are more operational, and like mine is applied research. But then there's some that are just pure fundamentals, and so that the education level is going to go on. I think even in those centers that are pure, though, there's opportunity there. You have to also, there's 10 NASA centers, so you have to want to live in one of those 10 locations. So that's another part of your decision process. If you're just set on living in Norfolk, Virginia, for instance, and you just got to be there, well, then you're going to only be able to work at Langley, and you might need a master's degree to work over there.
How do you feel like your military experience contributes to the shift in perspective that you might bring to your work? And are there other people at your center? Is there a lot of military experience?
We're maybe a quarter, maybe a third, something like that. The military is really, it's very good prep for all of these things. I see mostly, what I see almost all is there's obviously the all-important experience. The military does have a lot of educational programs. So if you're cash-strapped, that's a good place to get a degree or use a GI Bill once you're out. So it gives you a lot of opportunity if you have financial issues. That notwithstanding, what I see the most from the people that come in from with military experience is the military really teaches leadership. And so we get people in who they know who they are now, they know how to lead other people, they're a very effective team member, they know how to work on teams. That all gets beaten into you in the military after a couple of years, and you come out as a very, very strong team member. And we are a whole bunch of groups of teams. And so I'm obviously that's my background, but I'm pro on that. When I see the younger people, even with 3 and 4 years of experience, you can really notice a difference in how people are able to lead a team with that experience. That's one way. There's other ways. That's not the only way, but that's one of them. It's a very positive experience.
And I guess with you guys at 2 different centers and commenting on, trying to get people to work at your center or not another, what is one reason why, or your main reason why somebody should want to work at JPL or Armstrong respectively?
Well, I mean, I think working at any of the NASA centers is a privilege, and so from my perspective, I mean, it kind of goes to the sort of work that you're interested in doing, and I mean, my version of why I work at JPL is we're doers, right? We're people that make engineering, state-of-the-art engineering happen, and also with a science flair to it, right? But that was super motivating to me. If you wanted to be a human spaceflight person and work on big on SLS, then of course you're not going to come to, despite the P in JPL, there's not going to do too much of that stuff at JPL anymore. You would want to go work at Marshall the people I know that work at Kennedy. I mean, it's despite the fact that it's the swamp, to see a launch every 2 days now or 3 days is a pretty amazing thing. And so that's really an operational center where you're not so much on the upfront engineering of it, but you see the proof of the pudding very rapidly. And I think those experiences are kind of throughout the agency where there's some part of it. Langley and Ames very much into technology. Glenn, same thing. And so I think there's something to be said for whatever particular interest you have.
Yeah, and for us, it's we're again the applied research side. So we'll take an idea that was just on the drawing board or in the design phase from, say, Langley, and then what we'll do is figure out how to make this thing work, and that's the application side of it. So take this thing, what's it supposed to do? Let's strap it on an airplane. Let's fly it at Mach 2. Let's take it up to 50,000 feet. Let's shake it and bake it. Let's see if it works, and then bring it down and get it ready to go put on an airliner or ready to go put on the Mars lander. We did the radar work on an airplane for the final stages of the Mars lander. Yep. From an F-18 with a pod under the wing. So I mean, if you like the smell of jet fuel in the morning, getting up at 4 a.m. and afterburners running, and that's what I like. Well, then that's where you want to come.
None of these college kids. That's not there.
Like that.
4 a.m.
I don't know. It's pretty exciting.
It
sucks to get up that early, but that's when the sun's up, so you got to get up pretty early. But it's good once you're there.
Yeah, I think quite uniquely for you guys, it's one of the few times you get to sit in a room with about 300 college undergrads. Any raise of hand questions you have for the audience?
What questions do I have for the audience? I mean, it's like, the same question you asked us, right? What do you guys think is the future of, why are you here listening to us? What is the future of space? What excites you? Why is this something you're interested in, from a career perspective? And so you guys can answer because you're the representatives of these two.
Sure. I think for me, like maybe many of us in this room, space has just been a point of fascination since we were very young. I was certainly the kid that had the glow-up stars in the top of my room, and to contribute to humanity's endeavor into the cosmos is something that I'm particularly passionate about. I think it kind of hits on like what are life's most fundamental questions of, are we alone in the universe, right? Because if aliens are real, that's kind of crazy and means a large implication. But then if they're not, that also is a different implication. And I feel like space is kind of this place where you can really gaze into the questions of life, and to me that's fulfilling. Plus it's cool seeing like things light on fire and hopefully not explode, but when the explosions happens, it's pretty cool too. With the Rocket Club, we recently launched this last year, and it was very rewarding to see it go up in the sky and lose it, and go into the desert, work with a team and people who are very passionate. I think the Mars mission is particularly interesting. It'll be the first time we will have other people on another planet. It's not Earth where we came from. And it's just the expansion of humanity. I feel like we, as humans, are explorers and people who have ventured to new places. And that's, to me, the story of the human race and what we're going towards.
Yeah, I'd ask kind of much the same thing, is what excites you? What do you expect? What do you expect out of your next step after this? And what's exciting? What do you find exciting? I think what we're doing is pretty exciting. I'd like to make it more exciting. And I think what you just said hit a nerve with me, is once you see all of that work you just did, and it was maybe painful and long, and a lot of hard, long nights and early mornings and all that, but when you see that thing go, and then you realize that it took a team effort and you're part of that, that makes it all worth it. That's what gets me there. I don't know if that's still what gets you there, but I think it does. But what is it that makes you excited? And we want to meet you there for sure.
I get excited listening to you guys talk about the work that you do, especially from the perspective of civil service and being public servants and working for NASA as opposed to going privatized. And I'm also a little bit more on the interested in like the geopolitical impacts of so much space work. And we can do crazy stuff on Earth, and now the fact that we're beginning to control the airspace between Earth and the moon and talking about having tourism on the moon is crazy. And I think that's just such a different world that we're looking forward to. And it's super exciting to hear you guys talk about how much has changed in the time that you've been at your positions, and how much is going to change by the time that our grandkids are looking at these positions. It's very, I think, inspiring to hear that people are able to maintain so much excitement about something as removed as space, because of how important that can be for so many other things going on in the world. That's my thought.
This is a good time to be part of it, as long as we can keep our resolve as a country to keep moving that direction. And I think we're on the edge of it. So I'm hopeful.
Very cool. All right, well, we've come to the end of our time. I want to, on behalf of everyone here, of course, thank you guys so much again for joining us. This has been wonderful. NASA. You talk.
Great, thank you.
Very good.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.